Parallel Session 12, titled Dalit Men, Life Writings and Resistance, will be chaired by Professor Arun Prabha Mukherjee. Arun Prabha Mukherjee did her graduate work in English at the University of Salgar, India, and came to Canada as a Commonwealth Scholar in 1971 to do a PhD at the University of Toronto. She is the author of The Gospel of Wealth in the American novel The Rhetoric of Dreiser and His Contemporaries, Routledge Revival 2014, first published by Crumhem 1987, Towards an Aesthetic of Opposition, Essays on Literature, Criticism and Cultural Imperialism, Williams Wallace 1988, Oppositional Aesthetics Reading from a Hyphenated Space, TSAR 1995, and Postcolonialism, My Living, TSAR 1998. She has edited and written the introduction of Sharing Our Experience, Canadian Advisory Council on the Status of Women, 1993, an anthology of autobiographical writings by Aboriginal women and women of color. She is a member of York Stories editorial collective, which edited York Stories, Women in Higher Education, TSAR 2000. A translation of Dalit writer Om Prakash Valmiki's autobiography, Juthan, A Dalit's Life, Samya, Kolkata and Columbia U Press 2003, won the New India Foundation Prize for the finest book published in India during 2012 and 2003. Her translation of Dalit writer Sharan Kumar Limbale's novel Hindu was published in 2010, Samya Publications, Kolkata. As someone who became a refugee as a one-year-old when India was partitioned in 1947, she has an abiding investment in using literature to promote human rights and justice. After teaching at York University for 30 years, Arun retired in July 2016. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, you are on mute. No, ma'am, you are muted. If you can unmute yourself. The mic. The mic option.
Okay. Well, I am not very techno-savvy. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay. And Google Meet is also very new to me. It's been Zoom so far. So thank you all for, particularly Moitash and Suroshi, for in introducing me and getting me to this very exciting conference on caste. And the panel that I'm chairing for Dalit male autobiographies introduces me to a lot of wonderful new voices and new writing that I had only heard about, and I've been very keen to hear these papers. So I will introduce the bios of the writers of these papers, and then they will read their papers in succession. And I would request each one of them to hold on to the time limit. I would rather have them finish in 15 minutes so that we have some time for some discussion afterwards. So here are their bios. Paper 45, Caste in Aesthetics, Caste in Academics, a study of the pitfall of culture in Govardhan Wankhede is My Life, the journey of a Dalit sociologist, Mr. Subhasish Barua. He is an assistant professor in the Department of English at Nahagram Hiralal Paul College, Konnagar District, Hooghly, West Bengal, and a PhD research scholar in Department of English, Vidyasagar University, Midnapur, West Bengal. His research area includes Dalit literature, subaltern literature, literature of the marginalized, gender studies, post-colonial literature, and the comparative analyses among them. It also shows the similarity of Indian marginalized communities and the condition of the indigenous people abroad. He also loves to explore the intricacies of queer literature and the responses it receives from the world. Paper 46, Caste System and Dalit Oppression in Rural Punjab through the lens of Balbir Madhopuri's Against the Night. Ms. Parmjeet Kaur is an assistant professor in English in the Department of English, Cultural Studies and Foreign Languages at GSS Khalsa College, Patiala, Punjab. Her area of interest is the study of caste and untouchability in Punjab. Despite the abolition of untouchability 6 decades ago, the impositions of a variety of social disabilities on persons for reasons of their birth into particular castes remains a part of social reality. The practice of caste-based exclusion was a plan to block, I think that's more an abstract than a bio note, so I'll stop there. The next paper, Power, Resistance and Identity, Understanding Intersectional Realities Between Brahminism and Racism through Suraj Yengde's autobiographical text, Caste Matters. Ms. Ruchi Singh completed 5 years integrated course in English, BA English Honours and MA in English from Guru Ghasidas Central University, Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh. Currently, she is doing research in English from Guru Ghasidas Central University, Bilaspur. Her area of research is Dalit autobiographies, along with her interest in writing poetry. 2 of her poems, Crown of the Killer and An Envision of the Walking Man, were published by Poetry and COVID. Poetry and COVID is a project funded by the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council. The last paper, Dalitbahujan Nationalism versus Brahmanical Nationalism, a study of Bhanwar Meghwanshi's I Could Not Be Hindu, the story of a Dalit in the RSS. Ms. Ashmita Saha is a 4th semester master's student of English language and literature at the University of Calcutta. She received her bachelor's degree in 2020 from Bethune College, Kolkata. Her areas of interest include women's writings, Shakespeare adaptations, Indian literature in English, partition literature, and Dalit literature. I would like now invite the first presenter, Mr. Subhasish Barua, to begin her paper. His paper. Mr. Barua?
Ma'am, I think he has not joined yet, so we can move forward with the next presenter.
Okay, so that's, I invite Ms. Parmjeet Kaur to read her paper.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening to all.
Good evening.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Okay, ma'am. The topic of my paper is Caste System and Dalit Oppression in Rural Punjab through the lens of Balbir Madhopuri's Against the Night. The present paper, entitled Caste System and Dalit Oppression in Rural Punjab through the lens of Balbir Madhopuri's Against the Night, studies Balbir Madhopuri's autobiography Against the Night, which is originally written in Punjabi, which narrates a Dalit's angst of deprivation, social exclusion, and humiliation, as well as of resistance, achievement, and hope. The paper will explore how the subjective narrative of the Dalit writer tends to universalize the caste-based experience of his community. It will shed light on the plight of Dalits in rural Punjab. Against the Night is set in the village of Madhopur in Punjab. It traces the social history of the Dalit Chamars to which the writer belongs. Balbir Madhopuri was born in 1955 in the small village of Madhopur, Punjab. In his childhood, he used to work with his family as an agricultural laborer, but Madhopuri soon moved out of it and earned a degree in Master of Arts in Punjabi. Thus, he became a civil servant with Government of India and fulfilled the dream of his childhood. To quote, I thought of my Bua's son who was a government officer in Delhi and also my mother's brother who was a district collector. Should I remain uneducated? Should I continue to do what the rest of my community was doing? Should I work and slave for others so that they could live in luxury? No, it is the spirit to change one's fortune. The Punjabi title Shangya Rukh, that is the original title for this autobiography. This title Changya Rukh refers to a tree lopped from the top, slashed, and default. These meanings help in understanding the meaning of the title. It suggests a tree which is pruned and beautified. Pruning at one level refers to the violence to nature, but at another level, it also suggests growth. This aspect of pruning runs deep in Madhopuri's sensibility, as the writer uses same image in his collection of poems, Bhakda Patal, The Inferno. To quote, many a time I am dwarfed like a tree cut at the top, over whom passes the power line. I get pruned out of season when in passing someone is curious to know what my caste is. Unquote. The narrator views himself as a tree cut at the top. However, the cutting and pruning makes him able to deal with the problems he confronts in his life. The narrator shares the experience of a Dalit who faces humiliation and social prejudice day in and out. Madhopuri remarks that there are nearly 170 million Dalits in India, which means that 1 in every 6 Indians is a Dalit. In theory, untouchability was abolished when country got independence, and practice in any form was declared a criminal offense. All such caste communities, numbering more than 750 at present, according to the Anthropological Survey of India, came to be termed as scheduled castes for the purpose of a variety of constitutional and legal protections and affirmative actions by the state. What was meant to be protection and affirmative action turned into its opposite in social reality as the term scheduled caste became in common speech of ordinary men and women a term of abuse. Against the Night starts a dark history of Dalit oppression and humiliation by the upper caste Jats. These people are always settled in the western part of villages in Punjab. According to Hindu social order, this class do not belong within the 4 Varnas. The second factor is that the dirty water flows towards the west, so they cannot pollute clean water. As a result, these people are enslaved to live in dirt, mire, and slime. He introduces the reader with smelly, filth-laden streets, lice-infested clothes, foods like the meat of dead cattle, hard labor on the land of others, caste abuse, insults, the body language of fear, outrage, and clashes. The author tells us, to quote, if a low caste boy were to come out on the lanes of the village, all bathed and dressed in new clothes, his hair combed, one or the other of the Jats sitting under the trees would get up and throw mud on him. If he protests, he was sure to be beaten up. If an untouchable appeared in the village dressed in new clothes, he was certain to be given a beating on the pretext that the low castes were trying to become the equals of the higher caste. No one knew or could predict when such an incident would occur and where. unquote. Thus, life of dignity is not acceptable for an untouchable because that would entail equality with the rest of them. This kind of social injustice is starkly presented in the autobiography as the deep-rooted prejudice of the upper caste and their fierce hatred of the low caste becomes all too evident. Ironically, the upper caste cannot do without the group they intensely hate, for this group does the menial jobs for them. Jats and Brahmins cannot manage their everyday life smoothly without these people. They are dependent on this section of society. Still, their work is unappreciated. Contrarily, we find in the text that the upper caste wouldn't come close to them because they are untouchables. In the text, uh, Bhaiji of Gurdwara Sahib remarks about the children of low caste. Give these Tamar brats a shout and drive them off. The Jat Bhai of the Gurdwara advises others on the occasion of Sangrant. You can't control this litter. I myself will drive them away, the mothers, and he would jump up mouthing an obscenity, which we all completed in our minds. Thus, the low caste children are spoken of as litter by the Jat Bhai at the Gurdwara. That tells us of the status given to the Dalit community in rural Punjab. The narrator expresses his despair in the chapter The Tale of the Cracked Mirror thus. To quote, defilement, I had confronted this word time and again, the way the rope in our well had frayed by constant rubbing against the wall. My thoughts would suddenly grow wings like the ones insects sprouted during the rains. I would think of the care the Jamindars took care of animals, scrubbing and bathing and tending them tenderly. Their dogs roamed freely in the courtyard and even entered the kitchen. Their children petted the cat all the time, feeding the kitten milk, and Bhaiya and others like him have to carry their own tumblers and bowls from home, work hard for them the whole day, and still their animals are treated better than we human beings. Unquote. The narrator becomes aware about haves and have-nots in his early childhood. It fixes an identity on him of belonging to the caste of the polluted lot. Another Angus agent of oppression on the Dalits is state authorities who misuse their power on these powerless people. To quote, all the villagers were afraid of the Jaildar, Jagirdar, Safedposh and Nambardar. A Jaildar had many villages under him. He presided over a court and passed judgments. He enjoyed judicial powers. One had to comply with his decisions and pay fines, etc. It was said that a Jaildar was forgiven 5 to 7 murders by the government, and people did not have the courage to look him in the eye. The treatment meted out to the lower caste, especially untouchables, was oppressive and terrifying. The Jaildar compelled them to do beggar in his field or on his construction sites. If there was no such work available, then he got them to dig up the fields and throw the mud excavated in this way outside the village. This meant that he didn't not the days fixed for forced labor. One can still see small mounds of earth outside the villages. Unquote, as witnessed above, the power in the hands of the state officials becomes a deadly form of oppression. It mocks the democratic institutions in India with the view of establishing equality and justice. That a Jaldar was forgiven 5 to 7 murders by the government. It is a case in point. Nobody, we are told, had the courage to look him in the eye. As the Jaldar ruled the village as a dictator, Dalits were forced to work on the Jaldar's fields and construction sites. The landlessness continues to be a major source of deprivation and cause of the exploitation of Dalit communities. Government has supported the deprivation of all human rights and land to these downtrodden people. According to the land settlement rules in 1914 and 15, under the British, various restrictions were imposed on the Dalit communities. This makes it clear that the right conferred to Dalit communities is the right to provide free labor. In return, they were granted the right to remove the carcasses of animals as a gesture of kindness of the master who owned them. These rules put a big question mark on one's mind regarding British attitude towards and treatment of the untouchables. They did not give the untouchables the rights of equality, education, and property. The Punjab Land Revenue Act 1887 remained in force even during the British rule in Punjab, which prevents the untouchables from buying a piece of land even if they had the money to buy it. One such example narrator brings in the text is that a person from the narrator's community buys land in the name of a person from upper caste in the village because they couldn't buy it in their own name. Thus, these people depended on the landlords and jagirdars to earn their livelihood. The landlords were oppressive towards these low caste people. Not having a piece of land deprives Madhopuri as a child from being a participant in the cultural songs sung by his childhood friends who belong to upper caste. The meanings of the song are not suitable for writers' community. In the song, they pray to God, thus to quote, "O God, let it rain and thus give us grain. Black are the bricks and the stones, let it pour, let it rain." Unquote. The song seems ironical because the family of Madhopuri never gets enough grain and food without having their own land. Young Madhopuri wants to plant mango saplings in the limited yard of his house, and this is how his father reprimands him to quote, "It was when I was digging in our courtyard to plant the sapling that Bhaiya snatched the hoe from my hand and said, 'Mama, you are trying to ape the Jats. They have large lands and large havelis. We only have this much space where we can sit and relax.' My heart wilted like the plant, a storm blown away the flowers of my desire." Unquote. Interestingly, owning a piece of land is the deepest desire of the narrator's father. And finally, the narrator honestly aspires to own a house in Delhi. Owning land in the village is a mark of power and also a way of gaining freedom from the exploitation of the landowner, who is also the upper caste. Both caste hierarchy and ownership of resources collapse in the text as the Jats maintain supremacy over the Dalits on both grounds. The reaction of the Dalit community to this subjugation can be seen when they constantly desire a piece of land. In post-independence phase, even when the law allows these people to buy land, they are unable to buy it because of the poverty. They remain dependent on the landlords, which immensely suits the latter. They are given poor wages for working on the fields of Jats. Instead of taking their wages in cash, these people receive jaggery, onions, garlic, potatoes, and other such commodities from the Jat families they worked for. The price of these commodities is often increased, but their wages are not raised accordingly. Thus, it is a vicious circle of the members of the Dalit community find themselves caught in. Let's look at a passage from the text to understand this predicament better. To quote, "As I recalled the sarcastic comment, another thought occurred to me, and my father's dark visage flashed before my eyes. It was not my imagination, but a reality. Bhaiya tried to advise me. The athletes have twisted around and hurt themselves, but these jamindars have not given them even a word of praise. They say that the low caste must entertain and serve them. I say this stigma of low and high will never end in this country without a violent struggle. If only we had a few acres of land, then we would have not bothered about these mean zamindars. You see for yourself how much they hate us. What one has to tolerate many things to survive. What else one can do? We can only fret and fume about all this. Upper caste is dependent on Dalits. The narrator discusses that one of his relatives told him that the Sardarni she worked for as a sweeper had one day happily told her, sister, Khalistan is about to be created. That would be great. Hindus will all leave and you people will live up with us in Khalistan. Sardarni wishes that low caste people stayed with them in the newly created place when there is general animosity between two groups. Opening up the question of land, again the narrator's relative inquires, Sardarni, it would be great for you, but will we also get some land? Then again, why are you insisting that we should stay here with you in Khalistan? For us, Hindus and the Sikhs are the same. Sardarni's reply here reveals the true nature of the relationship between the two. She claims, we like you. That is why I am telling you, who will clean and sweep for us in Khalistan? Thus, these people are accepted only as sweepers and cleaners by the upper caste. Immediately, the narrator here draws a parallel between the present call for Khalistan and 1947, the emergence of Pakistan, by noting, I thought of Jinnah what he said at a meeting about this problem of the untouchables at the time of partition. He said that the untouchable population should be divided into two. It was much later that I comprehended the meaning of what he had said. The hypocrisy of the leaders is exposed here. It becomes clear that for Dalits, Hindus and Sikhs are the same, as they equally exploit them and wish them to remain their slaves and serve them throughout their lives. Dalits realize that religion is also used by the upper caste to keep them enslaved in poverty. The narrator believes that, like Hindu religion, no other religion in the world supports a system which upholds customs, and traditions that are discriminatory and
How do I stop this?
such an unjust and
I'm sorry, I need to stop the paper now. It's over time.
to the writer because of the books
Is
like
there a
this
host?
the narrator father claims in the text no one has the time to listen to our plea that this caste system wasn't ordained by God but has been made by man for his selfish motives. Later, God is complete fraud. If he does exist, then why doesn't he heed our prayers? We are better off without
Please.
the help of that oppressor. After the rejection of Hindu religion, Dalits turned to a new locus of morality, which is called Adharam.
Is there anybody
Adharam refers to the
here?
natives' religion and Adidharmis to the natives of the
Hello?
land. The movement stood as a rejection
Hello?
of the Hindu birth system and caste system. It fostered a unique Dalit identity for the people of the community. After realizing that Dalits had no future within Hinduism, they demanded that the Adidharmis be listed as a separate religious community. This was a major step in the direction of emancipation.
I've been saying, please, your time is up. Is there a way, is there anybody there to help?
We have to extend the time.
Yeah. So I asked for, the
Yes,
time
ma'am.
was up, but this,
Yes, ma'am.
hello?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, your time is up. So
There should be, which one, this one?
yeah. No, this one. It went up there. Yeah, she's stopped now. So I'll just go to the next one, but
Yeah.
it doesn't look like there's any host here. Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Kaur, I had to stop you. Your time is up and I have to go to the next presenter.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay. So, is Mr. Subhasish Barua present now?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so let's go to the next presenter, Ms. Ruchi Singh. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
A very good afternoon,
All right.
ma'am.
Okay, so
Ma'am, shall I start my paper?
yes, please.
Yeah, ma'am. Sure. My topic is power, resistance, and identity. understanding to an autobiographical text, Caste Matters. So here, Brahminism and racism intersect each other on the basis of gender, class, and caste, reflects various racial differences like racism in capitalism, religion, class, caste, and community. Brahminism regulates Hindutva and dominance. Indian elite society takes part in anti-racism slogans and movement, but taking part to speak against the anarchical structure of caste is still a big question. Subalterns have not been decolonized from the stratification of caste system in India. The person's belongingness is always judged by his or her caste. A democratic India is known for its unity in diversity, but the diversity is falling apart violently. Come to the racism part of Suraj Yengde, according to Suraj Yengde's autobiographical text, Caste Matter. A Scottish philosopher David Hume further rationalized famous 1748 essay of national character. He says, I am apt to suspect the Negroes and in general all other species of men, for there are 4 or 5 different kinds to be naturally inferior to the whites. That means the blacks, the Negroes are inferior to the whites, as what David Hume has already said in his essay, complexion than white. He also says that there is no complexion that can superior than white people. Not even any individual eminent, either in action or speculation. Same thing that is happened in Brahminism too. Here you can also find such kind of caste prejudices or the color prejudices before independence. Like caste prejudices has been linked to a darker skin shade since before the British arrived. Classical texts dating to the pre-British era also seem to identify cannibalism with darker skin tribals in the subcontinent. Like the dark skin, maybe they can not previously assume those Dalits and tribal, if they have dark skin, that means they are low. Dalits and tribal is equals to dark indigenous Dravidians. Upper caste, that is so-called light-skinned Aryans. Upper caste is equals to fair skin, is equals to touchable. Lower caste dark is equals to dark skin, is equals to untouchable. Come to the Brahminism part of, as what B.R. Ambedkar has said in his speech 1938, he claimed that when I say that Brahminism is an enemy that must be dealt with, it means that I do not mean that he's against Brahminism or he's against its power, privilege, or interest of Brahminism as a community. Beside that, Brahminism then is the most perfect form of conservatism, a status quo, because it shows the superiority. It does not show the egalitarian concept, that should be equalized to everyone, to equalize everyone. It always shows such kind of dominance, such kind of subjugation over other caste. So that means that Ambedkar defined Brahminism as the negation of spirit of liberty, equality, and fraternity. That is totally against the preamble of Constitution or Indian Constitution. Right. Further, this goes to find the oppressors group acknowledgement of being complicit in operation led me to investigate the role of Brahmins in the anti-class struggle. Suraj Yengde has focused upon that behind taking all the powers, taking all the monopoly. Are they able to perform themselves, or are they able to participate themselves in Dalit struggle? That is the only question that is asked by Ambedkar or Suraj Yengde's autobiographical text, Caste Matter. Did Brahmin ever participate in this struggle? Or did they often choose to sit on the sidelines where Brahmins united in their understanding of the Dalit struggle? Or did they have varying or contradicting opinions on the question of caste? the Brahmins' acknowledgement of privilege led to their participation in the question of caste. So the caste is the biggest question, that they can go against the caste stimulation, or they can go against the caste anarchy. So the Brahmins' acknowledgement of privilege led to their participate in the anti-Brahminic movement. So are they Brahmins are able to participate in anti-Brahminic movement? Is the is it can be possible or not? So their contribution to the struggle, however, remains unknown. This is what Yengde has said. The Brahmins do not talk about caste wherever they are in the dominance and make money, but discriminate pariahs in the name of caste wherever they seek to work. As what in Juthan Valmiki has said कि जो दलित है वो तभी उस दलित की प्रॉब्लम को समझ सकता है. अगर वो दलित नहीं है, that means if I belong to an upper caste, I cannot understand the problem of Dalits, right? I cannot just I can just write a paper, or I can just write the things that they are just that means they are struggling for, right? So this is a contradictory. This is what a controversial, that Brahmins can go against in anti-caste movements or not, but they should be. When they develop an egalitarian concept, when they develop that egalitarian thought, then definitely change will come, right? So come to the racism point. Peggy Mentosh, a white woman, wrote a paper, White Privilege and Male Privilege. She introduced 46 blind spots of white privilege instance where a person's skin color gave them an undue advantage. If these things are true, this is not such a free country, concluded McIntosh. That means you are analyzing the persons with spots, or spots free. If a white person, that is spotless, or a dark skinned person, that is full of spots, right? That the country is not free, is not democratic, that is totally under the dictatorship of something, or the monopoly of something, right? If these things are true, this is not such a free country. The author has discussed about racial politics during US presidential election 2016, that there are two parties in United States, first Democrats and the other Republicans. The Democrat is the Democrat is what which focuses upon liberal thoughts, and the Republicans, which is conservative. Democrats represent themselves liberal, whereas Republicans are conservative. Some white people become part of racialism and talk about the white community is being ignored. It shows the conservative mentality. This is the same thing that happens in India. The Savan people, they thought about that Hindu is in danger, or Hindu culture is in danger. How it can be? How the majority can be in danger? This is the same thing that is applied in US or UK, where the people, they think about that white people are in danger. How it can be possible? No, it cannot be. Right. The first contingent come to the Brahminism point when the Brahmins say that their caste is in danger, or their religion is in danger. The first contingent of Gautam Buddha's monk were Brahmins. Monks were the Brahmins of Buddha. This was one of the first minority group that accepted the egalitarian ethos of the time. This is what I have said earlier, that egalitarian thought is really, really important for each and everyone, whether which caste he belongs to. Either he is Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. An egalitarian concept or egalitarian platform should be given out to all, because we all have suffered by the caste consciousness. This is not all about Dalits, is also suffered by the caste consciousness just because of historical implications, that what he has suffered by, right? But one of the most important thing, the last but not the least, the egalitarian concept or the social welfare is really important, right? There is no superiority, there is no dominance, there is no subjugation. Everything should be cut out. Now further, I have taken the two platforms, that is media and capitalism. There are many Dalit activists or intellectuals has said that a Dalit should go in should make career in academics or civil services. These two rare fields that is very, I mean, these two fields are rarely taken by the Dalits. The first is media and the second is capitalism. Capitalism I will further explain. Firstly, I will explain media. What is how the media is monopolized by Brahmins? Can Dalit make his career in media or in journalism or in mass media? What India consumes today in the form of news is basically Brahmin propaganda. As what you can see that everywhere you can see how the media is propagating the propaganda, the fake propaganda, the dirty politics propaganda. Right. A study by the Center for the Study of Developing Societies found that in 2008, top upper caste, the Brahmins had an 85% share in key media position compared to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, which was nil. That means an ST-SC problems are taken very nil. उनकी प्रॉब्लम्स को लिया ही नहीं जाता है by the media or the journalism, right? According to the author, media has been monopolized by Brahmins. Serious issues are not discussed by media. As what I have said, that present media is not focusing on serious issues of India or the Indian society. This is not just a new problem. It is regulated before pre-independence. That's why Ambedkar has started his own newspapers or some kind of journals. The first is Mook Nayak, leader of the voiceless in 1920. Bahiskrit Bharat, the ostracized India 1927. Janta Masses 1930, or the Prabuddha Bharat 1956. Samta, Equality 1928. This is where a newspaper that was run by B.R. Ambedkar before pre-independence, right? Now the present context, there is a journalist Sudipto Mandal. There is an article in Al Jazeera, the New York Times. He has worked with New York Times, Scroll.in, Al Jazeera. He always writes upon the caste system or capitalism or the social issues. That means all the socio-politicals he always covered in his article. So there is an article, Indian media wants Dalit news, but not Dalit reporters, covered by Sudipto Mandal. He talks about caste privilege, its dominance, upper caste monopoly in journalism, institutes and news channel. He shared an incident of Asian College of Journalism. The incident is many upper caste students from middle class background in the 2016-17 were outraged. They started, that means some kind of a scholarship that is given to Dalit students. So that thing that was opposed by the upper caste students, right? So they started a whisper campaign against the project and called it reverse casteism. आप casteism लेकर के आओ, that means कि ये scholarship उन्हें ना मिले because they are incapable, they don't know anything. So why the scholarship is given to them? So adverse is spread. Upper caste middle class alumni joined the hissing chorus, accusing the institute's founder of being fake communist on a project to inject Marxism, practice casteism, and charge a bomb from student. So ACJ can be a very alien place if you are from, and very that means very outspoken, in a very outspokenness that people, that upper caste students, they are opposing the Dalit students. This cannot be tolerated by the Dalit community or by the Dalit student or by the Dalit intellectuals in academics or in any public sector or in any private sector. Right. Now, last my point is the intersecting connection between Dalit capitalism and Black capitalism. So capitalism is what? Capitalism is such a big thing. We cannot imagine Dalit capitalism, right? But when Black capitalism came, Dalit capitalism can also be flourished if it can be supported by the whole. Right. Bobby Seale, founding member of Black Panther, never supported black capitalism as a medium of economic power. He mentioned that capitalism is exploitative and the community cannot become exploiters. That means the black community cannot become exploiters like the white capitalism. He said that socialism will fight against capitalism. Same thing that is happened in Dalit capitalism. Dalit intellectual like Anand Teltumbde, he was against Dalit capitalism. But Chandrabhan Prasad, the founder of Dalit capitalism, he said that economic power or such kind of economic tool is very important for a Dalit to. This is what I'm saying, that power, resistance, and identity. Just identity that doesn't show that we are just writing an autobiography, we are just writing our experiences. This is all about that we have to flourish from our pain. We have to flourish from our past sequences, from our past pain, right? That is why we have to take such greater opportunities like capitalism or media, such kind of different platforms. McKissick is a founder of Black capitalism.
Ruchi, can you start winding down and coming to your conclusion now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sure, sure. So
Okay.
this is what I'm saying, that intersection, the problems, such kind of problems that they are intersecting to each other, right? There are such kind of the problems that is not different. The black community or the Dalit community, here you can see the hurdles that is same. That means two problems are intersecting each other in at one point. Like media issues, you can see the white media. There are also some there is also same problem that happened with black people, right? In India, Dalit media, you can see very less opportunities that is given to Dalit students. In capitalism, here you can see that very less people like Nivedita Menon, she doesn't supported Dalit capitalism, and there are so many Dalit intellectuals who didn't support Dalit capitalism. But this is what I'm saying, to empowering or for like flourishing, it is very important to start something new. And this is what Dalit capitalism is, that to resist, to find the opposition, to find the opposition, to fight for the opposition, identity, to make an identity that is really important, which is different from the whole, right? Like whole to particular or particular to whole. So a Dalit identity should go from whole to particular, and Dalit capitalism will help. Uh, really, like entrepreneurship, but it is really important, like DICCI, that is a helping source, right? That which helps a lot. So this is what I'm concluding. Thank you so much. Ma'am, you are on mute. Ma'am, you are on mute.
Thank you very much, Ruchi, for this very
Thank you.
interesting take on the text. I would now like to invite Ashmita Saha. Yes, please go ahead. You seem to be on mute, Ashmita. We can't hear you. I hope there is some technical support that can help.
Hi, Professor Mukherjee. Yeah, so I'll just ask Ashmita. Yeah, no, you are not. Could you unmute yourself, Ashmita? No, we cannot hear you actually. Uh, can you use a earphone or something, headphone? Yeah, just take a couple of seconds. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think, yeah. Not yet, not yet. Speak? No. Yeah. Can you leave and come back?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, speak. Unmute yourself, Oshmita, unmute.
Now,
Yeah, now you're audible.
okay,
Yes.
okay. I
Yeah,
tried reconnecting from my phone. Okay,
yeah, please
these
do. Yeah.
laptop mics don't work. Okay,
Thank you.
so ma'am,
Thank you,
may I
Professor
start now?
Mukherjee, for your patience. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, so ma'am, I'm starting. So my topic is Dalitbahujan nationalism versus Brahmanical nationalism, a study of Bhanwar Meghwanshi's I Could Not Be Hindu, the study of a Dalit in the RSS. The French critic Philippe Legeune's definition of autobiography as a retrospective prose narrative written by a real person concerning his own existence, where the focus is his individual life, in particular the story of his personality, does not really suffice for the genre of Dalit autobiography, since the particular relevance of the Dalit autobiography is its creative burst of the individual striving to assert himself, lest he disappears swallowed up by the alleged necessity of systemic orders and the divine truth of cultural dispensations imposed on him by the dominant social actors. Dalit autobiographies question all forms of exclusion and exploitation of Dalits. Even while being narratives of individuals, these autobiographies serve as narratives of the very communities they belong to. Thus, they become relevant as historical documents by establishing a right to speak both for and beyond the individual and contest explicitly or implicitly the official forgetting of histories of caste oppression, struggles, and resistance. The writing of autobiographies becomes a huge political act for Dalit authors, since it is one of the first steps towards the construction of their identity, their very selfhood. Bhanwar Meghwanshi, a former RSS member who had been enticed by the promises of equality and spurred on by the idea of nationalism propounded by the organization, provides an insider's perspective into the workings of the Sangh and exposes the idea of nationalism envisaged by the dominant Hindutva ideology to be inherently casteist. Drawn in by the madness of nationalism and the objective of establishing a Hindu Rashtra, this Rajasthani Dalit boy became a cadre who wanted to give his life in the service of the Bharat Mata. The irony inherent in such a stance becomes apparent, since although he felt it to be spiritual and uplifting, his very identity caused him to worry incessantly, because he always feared that someone would ask his caste, and then their behavior towards him would change. He writes, this fear was not without foundation, because this had indeed happened at a couple of homes. The intoxication of nationalism, which made him doubt a person's loyalty to the nation, upon even a mild questioning of the Sangh, is reconstructed by him as he writes, systematically using nation, religion, culture, and nationalism as popular slogans to mislead the masses. They put us mentally enthralled to them. This is why Shudras or backward castes still carry the dead ideas of Brahminism on their shoulders. The active role played by the Sangh in propagating such a sentiment is explained by Suryakant Wagmore as, while Hinduism in its popular practice lacks universal salvation, a philosophy of solidarity, and may seem more like a collection of castes that occasionally unite for political and ritual purposes, Hindutva in turn seeks to actively unite the divided and the hierarchically ordered castes under the rubric of Hindu identity. The fear of the other, Muslims and Christians, mostly dominates the repertoires of such mobilization, along with cow protection and localized communal conflicts. The way this fear of the other adds to the agenda of hyper-nationalism working within a person's psyche and the assertion of their Indianness through a sort of reclamation of their homeland from these others is revealed by Meghwanshi. Upon encountering Muslim passengers en route to Ayodhya, he writes, or rather, he shouts at them, if it's in India that you want to stay, Vande Mataram is what you say. He writes in the text, we glared at them menacingly, we wanted to throw them off the train, these infidels, because of whom our Lord Ram was imprisoned in a derelict monument. Such thoughts stoked my hatred of the Muslim passengers. My rage was so great that if I had a weapon, even before liberating Ram Janmabhoomi, I would take care of these infidels. But soon enough, the author realizes the futility of his efforts, since he would forever remain a mere Trishul wielding foot soldier within the discourse generated by the Brahmanical nationalism. Kancha Ilaya Shepherd observes, in the political realm, they want the Dalitbahujans to be Hindus for purposes of vote enumeration and electoral victory, but without any right to rule Brahminic Hindus. Upon close analysis, Meghwanshi develops a more informed opinion of the caste politics of the Sangh. Later, he notes, among the 6 pracharaks, that is the full-time Sangh activists, who later went on to become Sarsang Chalaks, that is the helmsmen of the Sangh, 5 were Brahmins and 1 Kshatriya. So this is an establishment where the Dalit Bahujan masses would be unable to ever rise to any position of prominence. He realizes that the Dalits and the Adivasis were mere tokens. The real owners of the Sangh were Brahmins and Panyas. It was immaterial to them. They only want us to attack the Muslims, otherwise we did not matter at all. This realization starts drawing upon him following a conversation with one of the district pracharaks, where his aspiration of becoming a pracharak was quashed. He was made to believe that a person from a marginalized community becoming a pracharak would engender internal disputes, and this would weaken the work of the Sangh. This feeling of otherness and humiliation culminates with Meghwanshi's realization that the upper caste members of the Sangh would never eat at his, a Dalit person's, home. And this moment of realization comes with an acknowledgement of the pain and humiliation that he had been subjected to. He writes, or rather questions himself and the ideology he had been subscribing to. I felt defeated in my own home, but I didn't know by whom. I experienced fully what it meant to be of a lower caste. Again and again, the thought troubled me. How can this happen? How can the Sangh do this to me? They don't believe in untouchability, in caste discrimination. They believe all Hindus to be one. They talk of a united nation, and then this kind of a hypocrisy. Later, when he comes to know that the food served by him had actually been thrown away, anger becomes a part of his experience and propels him on the quest for dignity. This prompts him to shift his stance from being a member of the Sangh Parivar to finally becoming an Ambedkarite. He raises questions. What is my own identity? What am I? Who am I after all? A devotee of Ram? A Hindu Karsevak? Or a Shudra, an untouchable? By generating this dialogue, he dismantles the Sangh's monologue. We want pracharaks, people who convey the message unquestioningly, not vicharaks, people who question and think. This marks the assertion of his identity as a Dalit individual, who then goes on to partake in Dalitbahujan nationalism instead of being a mere Trishul-wielding foot soldier within the discourse generated by Brahmanical nationalism. According to Kancha Ilaya Shepherd, the Dalit Bahujans, the Adivasis, the Mool Nivasis were the true custodians of nationalism, since the nation itself had been built upon the labor provided by the Dalit Bahujan masses. V. Geetha writes, born to labor, Dalits cannot claim the rights of knowing, and being denied that right, they cannot know of or escape their conditions of being laborers. Brahmins, on the other hand, are the natural custodians of learning, but the knowledge they produce is like a fetish, a mysterious thing which escapes and transmutes the labor which is instrumental in creating the conditions of knowledge in the first place. With the hegemonization of Brahmanical culture, the theory of purity and pollution was formulated, which constructed the Brahmanical castes exploitative by nature as pure and the truly productive castes as polluted. The idea of Dalit Bahujan nationalism poses a serious threat to the concept of Brahmanical nationalism propounded by the Hindutva ideology. The author's initial passion for chanting Lord Ram's name during the Ayodhya dispute, his subsequent arrest, all of this initially helped him ground his identity with the dominant Hindutva forces. His rejection of Ambedkar, Phule, Kabir, Buddha, and his acceptance of the ideologies of the figures to which the Sangh subscribed. His subsequent leaving of the Ambedkar hostel is an expression of the Dalit subject's unconscious desire to identify with the upper caste ethos of RSS. He writes, I gradually became more and more of a nationalist. I was filled with pride and being Hindu and of pure Aryan blood, and I began to look down on people following the other faiths. Having his own caste identity blurred, even if that is only superficially, he submits to the ideology which promises him equality and provides him a space within the majoritarian discourse. He elucidates this further with respect to the backward caste community about whom he writes that they consider themselves pure Hindu and under the sway of Hindutva and are at the forefront of committing atrocities against Dalits. But they have no sense of their own position. If we ask these foot soldiers of Hindutva what their own position is in the caste hierarchy of Sanatan Hinduism, they are stunned. When forced to accept that they are Shudras, their faces darken. The truth is so bitter it is impossible for them to accept. Pushed to the wall by its force, they start blustering loudly, repeating the hollow formula, say it with pride, we are Hindus. Kancha Ilaya Shepherd believes that in the guise of a nationalist cultural element, this spiritual fascism, which rests upon the belief that the Dalit Bahujans are to be made to live and work for the cause of upper caste education, enjoyment, and wealth, but not for themselves, is being shoved down the throats of Dalit Bahujans. And indeed, many have now swallowed it. Meghwanshi's evolution from a Sanghi to a rebel, as he himself says, the conflict between Brahmanism and Dalitism within him is important, since it comes with the realization that he has been alienated from his very self, and this prompts him to launch questions at the organization. He dismantles the concept of a Hindu nationalist identity which subsumes the Dalit Bahujan masses under the rubric of Hindu unity by exposing its exploitative nature. The Sangh functions by exploiting the labor produced by these people. His experiences with the Karsevaks during the Ayodhya dispute and the Gujarat massacre serve as examples in this respect. He writes, while referring to the 2002 Gujarat massacre, much of the violence had been conducted by Dalits and Adivasis, and many of them had also been killed by police bullets as well as in the general violence. The game plan of the right-wing forces was successful. Muslims, Adivasis, and Dalits died fighting each other, while those who had instigated the violence remained safe. Both groups live under a cloud of suspicion. The capability of one is constantly doubted, of the other, its patriotism. Both are deeply unhappy, but those who manage religion like a business are successful in getting the poor of one community to attack the other as their enemy. Dalits attempt to prove themselves pure Hindus by taking a leading part in riots and the violence against Muslims. The Sangh does not simply limit itself to invading the psyche of the Dalitbahujan masses. It even goes so far as to approximate Dalit heroes and cultural figures and distort them by aligning them with the ideology promoted by the Sangh and present them as figures who have sacrificed themselves for the greater cause of nationalism, that is, the Brahmanical brand of nationalism. Meghwanshi observes that one of the first Bahujan leaders who had contributed to the growing movements of assertion among the Dalit Bahujan communities, Ramdev Peer, had been labeled as the son of Hinduism, who died fighting the Mughals while protecting cows. Moreover, fabricated stories about Ambedkar were circulated to prove that he supported the Sangh and its agenda. Similarly, the RSS's technique of seeking out Dalit and Adivasi leaders who spoke up for their rights, for the rights of their communities, and to win them over with honors, posts, and prestige is elucidated in an article titled The Crisis in Dalit Bahujan Politics. The shallow representational politics of social justice seems to have found a space in right-wing politics. The right appears to be a welcoming of a brand of politics that demands representation without any accompanying social and economic agenda. In I Could Not Be Hindu, the story of a Dalit in the RSS, Bhanwar Meghwanshi traces his own journey over the course of two ideological standpoints. And in doing so, he opens up a space for some form of dialogue between the two forces and points out the casteism, the politics of invisibility inherent in one of these stances. Drawn from his lived experiences of pain and humiliation, the text serves as a testimony for him and the thousands of other Dalit Bahujan masses who have been drawn into the organization and then simply turned into its muscle power. Thus, the text becomes a form of resistance on his part and acts as a moral medium of protest. It records the foregrounding of his identity as a Dalit individual. Through the very act of writing, he problematizes the concept of nationalism propounded by the Hindutva forces and publicizes the casteism practiced by them under the guise of nationalist culture. Thank you, ma'am. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Ashmita, for keeping to the time limit and presenting this very interesting text, which I would love to lay my hands on right now. Is Mr. Barua present or he's not? Should I assume that we have only 3 presenters?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. He has not joined.
Okay. I guess if we had known, we could have allocated a little more time for the presenters who are here. So I'm sorry for giving you warnings and cutting you off. But the bright side of it is that we get to have more time for discussion. And in that spirit, I would first like to engage with Parmjeet Kaur's paper, as well as the text that she used, Balbir Madhopuri's Changya Rukh. Parmjeet, thank you very much for introducing me to this text, first of all. It's difficult to keep up with so much new work that has gone on in Dalit literature, especially while we are stuck here in the pandemic and I cannot travel, I have not traveled. So I have the questions that arose for me reading the 3 papers. Some of them are similar and some are the text specific. So with the Madhopuri's book, would you be able to speak a little bit about Madhopuri saying, as he was um, engaging with manual labor, he still had these two role models in his family who had made it to these lucrative civil service jobs. So would you be able to speak about that sort of division between Madhopuri's family, which was still doing physical labor, versus the relatives who had gone on and were a source of inspiration for him? Can you hear me, Parmjeet? Mahitosh, would you be able to help?
Yeah, so sorry. Okay. Mm,
Is Paramjit able to participate, or we should move
yeah,
on?
Parmjeet, are you there? The icon is on, so Parmjeet is probably there, but yeah. Hi, Parmjeet.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Could you
Can you?
please repeat the question for me, ma'am? Because my microphone was off.
Oh, okay. I mean, I thank you for the presentation and apologize for having to interrupt you because at that moment we had 4 speakers lined up. So one, I mean, I have a couple of questions. So I'll first ask this question that Madhopuri speaks about the relatives that had already left the agricultural labor while he and his family were still
Yes, ma'am.
drudging at it. So could you speak about that differential between branches of his family that were well off, and then he himself, like does that autobiography sort of presents that economic disparity between the family itself?
Yes, ma'am. There is a big difference between both families. Actually, Madhopuri's family is completely dependent on the manual labor they do on others' lands, and both these relatives are his role models. And his father also completely, and his father also motivates him to study and follow those relatives, because father advises him that education is the only way, only medium through which you can move out of the clutches of this poverty.
So many Dalit sort of writings speak about how the well-off, start what the phenomenon called passing. They forget their poor, still Dalitized relatives and cut off all contact with them. Was that Madhopuri's experience? Is it at all sort of in the autobiography, or is it papered over? That was sort of my question.
But Madhopuri was not that kind of person, I think, because in the last chapters of his autobiography, when he joins civil services, he often sends money to help those poor people who are still living in the village. He even takes a loan from his salary to help those poor people in the village. That is why we can say Madhopuri is a little bit different. Though he lives in Delhi, but he still helps those poor people in his village because he understands the problems faced by those people. And indirectly, we can say he is part of that setup at present.
Okay, thank you. I guess just one last question I would ask is, education is another sort of very important focal point in Dalit autobiographies.
Yes,
And the difficulties in the school, especially the casteism of the teachers, which it has been presented through this trope of Dronacharya and Eklavya. So I haven't read Madhopuri's book, and you are the only sort of source for me. And you didn't kind of talk about his experience in the school, the rural school, where you talked about his sort of long journey to the school. But what happened in the school?
Ma'am, he experiences such kind of discrimination in school also because his school teacher often uh, uh, often often gives them orders, in a sense we can say, to sweep, to clean the school, while his other friends who are from other classmates who are from upper caste, they can't do, and the orders to those students uh, are not for doing such kind of jobs. In school also, Madhopuri and his classmates who are from Dalit community, they do sweeping, cleaning, and an example in a chapter when his teacher asks Madhopuri to bring fodder for his animals also, and Madhopuri even regrets about this type of discrimination which he faces in school. When he goes to school, people from other communities also view his education as a threat to their supremacy. For
Yes.
example, in the text, there is a landowner who often says when he sees these children are going to school from Dalit communities, he says all these people have started studying and are going swollen headed. If they all get jobs, who will work in our fields? Such kind of discrimination he faces in school and in society also by dominating communities.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you.
in excuse me, in autobiography, in one chapter he even raises a question. The question is that what kind of benefit is there going to school if in the school they realize me about my caste?
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for further throwing this light. And I guess I would now go to the next speaker and ask her for a little more elaborations on Yengde's text. So Ruchi, you present.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, hello.
Hello, ma'am.
So Suraj, Yengde's text that you sort of dealt with, and the, I guess, trans-specific global kind of issues.
Yes, ma'am. It's so much, ma'am. It's so much.
Yes.
It's so much. Ma'am.
And I mean, you were pretty sort of very contemporary. This the first segment where you spoke about this white woman lawyer who is talking about how the she obviously she's a white supremacist who is
Yes,
very
ma'am.
concerned about these new
Ma'am, everyone, ma'am. Ma'am, the white supremacists are always concerned about about the class, about the community. So I think it is very impossible to start a new revolution, ma'am. in reality it is very, very impossible. I don't think so, ma'am, it can be cultivated or not, but I belong to an upper caste, ma'am, seriously, and I am very unbiased to this. I'm doing research. I have taken other autobiographies by Yashika Dutt, Sujata Gidda. Ma'am, I think, ma'am, it is very, very important, because everyone is suffered by the caste consciousness, ma'am. Everyone is suffered. And ma'am, sometimes I react, and I really want that some different kind of change should become. Different, a very different kind should be change. Not in a violent. It can be in a non-violent way, ma'am. This is what I'm saying.
I'm very pleased to hear your sort of self-criticism, and
Yes, ma'am.
that sort of often disappears, from the academic writing, where people are kind of, distance themselves and see the text as something separate from them. So I guess that consciousness of being an upper caste reader reading the Dalit text has to be sort of constantly with us. And
Yes, ma'am.
do you think, like, Yengde's he's able to navigate this situation of him having reached the epitome of this paradise, whatever, the US, and then the his look at shall we say the good Brahmins who collaborated with
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
and others, and then this whole is he able to get out of this idea that there are whites and then there are blacks and there are Brahmins and then there are non-Brahmins, and is he able to say, well, we need to mobilize that you were talking about, that everybody has to have that egalitarian consciousness? Does that appear in the text?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, in some sort of Yengde, I find that Yengde is partial to some kind of point, in some kind of points. When I read about black capitalism and Dalit capitalism, he wrote about black capitalism, where I find that there are so many sources. He wrote about different kind of revolutions or different kind of ideologies related to Booker T. Washington, Du Bois, his achievements, or his their ideologies that he has mentioned. But in Dalit capitalism, he is trying to he's trying to that Dalits are suffering. Not in that way. He was explaining that there are more opportunities can be come in front of Dalits. So I think that not mistakenly, but in some kind of, ma'am, I think he's partial, or in one of his chapter, The Many Shades of Dalits. Personally, I was so emphasized by that chapter, because in that chapter he explained about different kind of Dalits, different many types of Dalits, like Ambedkarite Dalits, obsessed Dalits, elite Dalits, suffering Dalits. So this kind of thing that I find that, yeah, Yengde has actually justified the things that ma'am, in Dalit, in elite Dalits, that elite Dalits still find themselves that they are subjugated by the upper caste. They are they know they have every kind of sort of, they have such kind of comforts related to privilege, such kind of, even they are living a materialistic life, but still they show that I am a sufferer, I am this, I am that. No, you have to come out from that, because you are using the things, ma'am. like I am an upper caste, ma'am. In my academics, I should not say, but I will say, in my professor has told me that don't choose Dalit topic, because you are an upper caste. How can you choose Dalit? So I told them, sir, there is interest. This is my interest. I want to do research in this Dalit autobiographies, not just because that I am by. Even ma'am, they are asking about my gotra, my ma'am. Ma'am, seriously, ma'am, this kind of thing that still happened in ma'am, in academics, ma'am. And ma'am, seriously, this is a serious problem. This is such a serious kind of problem, ma'am.
Absolutely. And, if we had a lot of time, I would tell you about my my university
ma'am.
also. But, similar things happen
Yes,
here
ma'am.
also. So,
Ma'am, this is popularism, ma'am. This is popularism. They are evolving popular culture, that how can an upper caste girl can choose Dalit autobiography or Dalit feminism or Dalit liberating ideas. Ma'am, everyone can choose this line. If she
absolutely.
wants to, if she wants to change through her writing, through her reading, she can take, ma'am. She can take.
Absolutely. There's a sort of, I wish we could go on about it, but I don't want to monopolize the time. So
Sure, ma'am.
I
Sure,
would
ma'am. Sure,
go
ma'am.
to the next speaker, and then maybe some time, and then
Thank
we
you.
can come back to this very
Sure, ma'am.
important topic in the group discussion at the end. So
Yes,
I
ma'am. Thank
move
you so
on
much,
to
ma'am.
Ashmita. And the book seems to be dynamite about, Bhanwar Meghwanshi's sort of moving, first joining the RSS and then, moving out of it and writing about it. So what I'm curious, in terms of, writing the autobiographical sort of narrative about this movement, there's always like a watershed or a turning point in the autobiography when a subject becomes conscious. And that to me is, I guess, the crux of reading an autobiographical text, when what they call in the sort of popular linguistic mode, the light bulb moment, when suddenly you become conscious. So in Meghwanshi's text, could you just elaborate a little more on why he thought he had, before the awakening, how could a sort of a person born untouchable aspire to the pure Aryan sort of blood lineage, which is so denied in any way? How was he even able to think that he had the possibility?
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, as he writes in the autobiography, that there were these schools which were set up by the RSS schools, and basically what we know as sakhas. So these were set up in his villages, and they are probably present all over India in all the villages. So he writes that when he used to go to school, and then from that school, so he somehow he got into that saka, and then he was very inspired by this idea of creating this Bharat, this Brahmanical nationalism, this idea of nationalism. And this very idea of nationalism, it is ingrained within them. uh, when they start attending these sakhas through prayers and by repeating prayers and certain slogans and certain catchphrases. So these are ingrained within them that you are a Hindu, and so they learn to avoid that their own identity, that they are Dalits. So they grow up thinking of themselves as Hindus who have been accepted within this majoritarian discourse. So, but they are unaware that they are simply being used by this majoritarian discourse, which would then gradually deny them all of their rights. And they would simply be employed as the muscle power of the organization. So he had certain ideas, and he had grown up, but as he writes, his family did not subscribe to this particular ideology. His family was totally different. In fact, they were opposed to this ideology, and his parents, they had tried to warn him about this also. But he was inspired by it, so he had joined this, and he had grown up with this idea that he was a Hindu, someone of pure Aryan blood, and he had learned to ignore his identity as a Dalit individual who was actually being oppressed and who would then only remain as a Trishul wielding foot soldier and who would be denied of every other rights and all positions within that organization. So this he has written that uh, when he went to some, I think that was a Sarsang Chalak, and he said that he would want to become a pracharak. No, he went to a district pracharak, and he asked him that how he himself could become a pracharak. So he got the reply that someday somebody would ask him that uh, from where do you belong, what is your caste, and then you would become uncomfortable and you would become upset and you would start arguing with the ideology, and you will start arguing with this ideology which we propound, this idea of the Bharat, of a Hindu unity, and then you will start revolting against it. So and this would create disputes within the Sangh. So they brainwashed him sort of that it is better to remain within a lower position so that you yourself are safe, so that you won't be upset. But actually, it would fulfill their agenda of propagating the idea of a Hindu nationalism. But for him, which you said as the light bulb, the turning point, it was that when he had served food to some of the upper caste members, they were having a procession. They were having a procession and they were passing through his village. So he decided that he would serve them food. And he did that. And he even invited them to come and eat at his place. But they refused. They said that pack it up and we would have it later in some other village. But later, one of his friends came and informed him that they had simply thrown the food away, and he went there where the food had been thrown away and he saw it. So that was a sort of turning point for him, and from then on, he was devastated. And he even writes in the text that at one point of time after that particular incident, he had even thought of killing himself because he could not locate his identity. Till then, he had grown up thinking as this Sangh as something which would not discriminate, as something which would give him as an identity as someone of pure Aryan blood, as a Hindu. But now, when he had witnessed this sort of humiliation, this sort of discrimination firsthand, he was extremely devastated and he even thought of killing himself. So this was the turning point, and he even writes that he took this matter up with people within the organization, from the pracharaks to even those in the higher positions of the organization. But all of them simply refused to engage with this matter, and they simply dismissed it as that it was not something very significant. So that was the turning point, and from then on, he started engaging with more of with literature which was written by the Dalits and Dalit authors and thinkers and people of other castes and religions. And then he decided that that he should stop subscribing to this sort of ideology, which would deny him his identity. And then he goes on to formulate his own identity. Ma'am, you are not audible, ma'am.
Thank you for that elaboration, because the turning points, obviously, the rejection of food is so important that he would even want to kill himself. I think those are the kinds of highlights that readers really sort of need and benefit from. So I think we still have some time, and I would like now to the presenters can ask each other, or if there are people in the audience who have questions, please, this is your moment.
Ma'am, we have questions from YouTube here in the chat box. These questions are general questions directed to all the presenters. You may ask the presenter to answer these questions.
So could you then? I mean, I have. I
I
guess.
think, yeah, but Oishani, please read out the questions. That would be more convenient for
Sure,
Professor
sir.
Mukherjee. Yeah.
Sure, sir. The first question we have from YouTube is from Hironno. The question is, in Frantz Fanon's Black Skin, White Mask, he talks about a persistent rage in the descent against colonial hegemony. A similar sense of non-violent but resilient rage is purported by Sharan Kumar Limble in his views of Dalit aesthetics. I was just curious about the general views of the presenters regarding this question.
And there is another question, perhaps. Oishan, you could just read out, and then the Prabha will-
Okay. Okay. So the next question is from the audience again from YouTube. It's for Ruchi Singh. The question is, Suraj Yengde in Caste Matters talks about Brahmins against Brahmanism. Would you agree with the idea that Brahmins can ever be opposed to Brahmanism in its entirety? So now over to you, presenters. Please answer.
Thank you, ma'am. I have written, even I have commented, in the majority, Brahmins cannot go against Brahmanism. If they will, they have to come out from privilege and power. In reality, it will take much time to start such kind of oppositions. As I have told earlier to ma'am, that it will take much time. It will take more time to start such kind of oppositions, right? Brahmins cannot go against Brahmanism. Uh, Even I have also mentioned that only those Brahmins can go against Brahmanism who develop such kind of egalitarian ideologies, or like reading Ambedkar, uh, reading even other even about culture, even culture and ethos. In Brahmanism, you can see that Brahmanical culture is always superior to any other culture. Everyone is appreciating Brahmin culture, Brahmin ethos, Brahmin devotion, not other culture. Why this is happening? So in majority, we cannot say that Brahmins can go against Brahmanism. Sometimes I just find that it is an illusion, like Brahmins can go against Brahmanism. I can go against Brahmanism, but I am the only one now, because I am doing research, or I have taken part in intellectualism. But other common people who are not in academics or not in other sectors, how they can go? If they will go, they have to read, right? They have to read such kind of readings. They have to involve themselves in that kind of modern ideas. Then they will oppose such kind of such kind of things. Otherwise, I don't think so that change will come. It will always be limited to reading, writing, and listening. Change is such a big thing. So I think it will take much and much time. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Ma'am, the other question we have from Sharan Kumar Limble's aesthetic views on Dalit literature. So, should I again repeat that question? Ma'am, you are on mute.
Any of the presenters can take it, I presume. Go ahead, repeat that question then.
Yes, sure, ma'am. In Franz Fanon's Black Skin, White Mask, he talks about a persistent rage in the descent against colonial hegemony. A similar sense of non-violent but resilient rage is purported by Sharan Kumar Lindley in his views of Dalit aesthetics. I was just curious about the general views of the presenters regarding this question.
Okay. So I presume that the person is asking about rage and the Dalit writer, Dalit activist, and their anger, their rage against the establishment. So would any three of the presenters want to take that on in the books that they spoke about? Did they find rage? If nobody is speaking, then should I?
Ma'am, I
Yes.
had an observation. This person has spoken about rage. So when I was reading Akkar Mashi by The Outcast by Sharan Kumar Limbale, so the element of rage, it is very prominent in his text because of course he has faced situations of humiliation. He has faced humiliation, and that gives rise to a form of rage which is of course justified. But when I had read Siddhalingaya's Orukeri, which was translated as a word with you world, so there Siddhalingaya takes a very different approach because his text is extremely humorous. And I felt that it is not necessary that Dalit autobiographies or Dalit literature should always have this element of rage because Siddhalingaya's Orukeri, uh, since it is so humorous, it uses the humor as a form of resistance. So I think it can be because here we have seen that humor is being used as a form of resistance. So it is not necessary that rage should always be present in Dalit literatures, Dalit life narratives, in all forms of Dalit writing. It can be present, but I don't think it is a necessary element to be present in all of Dalit literature.
What do the other presenters think? Is humor as useful as rage?
Ma'am,
Yes.
Ma'am, I also find rage in Kancha Ilaha Shepherd, his recent book, Beef, Brahmin, and the Broken Men. And the second one, I Could Not Be a Hindu. I find such violent, not violent, I mean the rage quotations written by Kancha Ilaha Shepherd. So, ma'am, I also find that sometimes the writers, not just Dalit writers, even I mean, I am just saying that a Dalit intellectual should be written in that way. But, ma'am, what about the rural people? What about the rural Dalit people? Are they able to read? Are they able to find such kind of sources? So, ma'am, I think. It is because I think, ma'am, recently, yesterday or a day before, I was reading Beef, Brahmin, and the Broken Men. Such kind of violent quotation I have written in that text. So, ma'am, I find that is not justified, ma'am. I think. Ma'am, because I am a researcher, so ma'am, I have to find such things, ma'am. I cannot be partial. Ma'am, I have to be unbiased. I have to be.
I agree. So, I heard that you said that in this text there's a very violent sort of
Ma'am,
comment.
not in that violent way, but ma'am, that is not justified, ma'am. Not justified. I think it will take more researches to that particular quotation, I think, ma'am.
I see.
Yes, ma'am, definitely I will do more research for justifying that quotation. I will do.
Okay, thank you. So we have 1 minute left.
so
I
much,
think
ma'am.
we this was a very productive session, and I certainly learned a lot, and through the papers as well as the Q&A, and I'm sure the audience, the larger audience did too. And we have to, I guess, come to a conclusion. It's been wonderful to interact and connect, and it's given me a lot of food for further thought. Thank you all very much.
And thank you, Professor Mukherjee, for actually making it to
Thank you so much,
the
ma'am.
session. I'm really happy to meet you here, at least virtually. And
Yes.
I have read your translations, and those were really, I mean, I should say, although I haven't read the original, I think it was reading the original was actually reading the translation was an experience, absolutely. And because of your translations, I could get to know about certain literatures which I otherwise wouldn't have been able to read. So
Well,
I would like to personally thank you for your hard work. I know translation is a very difficult task, and you have done it so wonderfully. And also personally, I would like to thank you for agreeing to chair the session. Thank you very much.
well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much for your kind words about the translation. I guess the translation is a reader of the text, and the translation is an act of appreciation of the text. So thank you for organizing this wonderful conference. And I hope that there will be some volumes coming out of it for us to read and further move on in the discussion. So
Yes,
thank
yes.
you, presenters. Thank you, the organizer, Moitosh, and
Thank you
all
so much, ma'am.
success.